So over the last 5 years, I've read pretty much every time management book out there. And there are 4 habits that I genuinely use every single day to make my time management more efficient. And this allowed me to be a mechanical engineering student at Oxford, while also playing multiple sports, training 15 hours a week, reading, watching TV, and even having plenty of time to hang out with friends. So let's run through these 4 habits in this video. Hey friends, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, I'm Bartol. I'm an Oxford graduate with a master's in mechanical engineering, and I've studied my entire life. I've made all the possible mistakes, and so on this channel, I'll be sharing tips that I've learned from them so that you don't have to repeat them. I'll also share other aspects of life, like sailing yachts in the Mediterranean for clients or being a private chef in the French Alps. So stay tuned for any updates. So let's jump into it. Habit number 1 is to treat work sessions like you're going to the cinema. Now this sounds a little bit strange, but it works. It's just a mindset shift. When you go to the cinema, you will have prepared yourself to be sat in a seat watching the film, immersed in that experience for probably 2.5 hours without moving. And work should be treated exactly the same. You should be doing everything to prepare for being seated for 2.5 hours in your chair and working without getting up, in order to maximize the opportunity for entering that flow state of genuine immersion in your work. I picked up this idea a few years ago from Gary Keller's book, The One Thing, and it has honestly been a complete game changer for me. I think just going into a work session thinking, I actually need to prepare to sit here for an hour, hour and a half, or 2 hours and be really focused has completely changed how I think about work sessions and how I approach them. I give them much more respect this way, and so they pay back a lot more as well. It means that before I even sit down to work in the office or at home, I make sure I've been to the toilet, stretched my legs, got myself a drink, and probably a healthier snack than at the cinema. I also make sure my phone is on silent, which allows me to really immerse myself in the work I'm about to do. And just like when you're at the cinema, if you're like me and you find it hugely distracting and annoying when people rustle around in popcorn and generally make noise around you, taking you out of that state of flow of watching the film, I would strongly recommend that you use either a playlist of classical music or sounds that help you focus, or anything that will help you focus out from the distracting noise and make you zone in. This is so important for me when I'm working. I always have my noise cancelling headphones, and this helps me enter my silent world. It's these small tweaks that you do, like putting your headphones on, or my friend even used to brush his teeth before studying because it would be a sort of silent signal to the brain that they were entering their work mode. All of that then puts me in a state of mind where I'm ready to go into the flow state and fully immerse myself in any work that I'm going to do. The second habit is to batch tasks before you even start. So batching is a very simple idea where rather than switching between, I'm going to water this plant here, and then I'm going to do a bit of reading, and then I'm going to do some work over there, then I'm going to clean the floor, you try to batch similar tasks together. So watering all of the plants at the same time, then cleaning all of the floors together, then doing all of your reading. It just makes sense. This generally makes life way more efficient. Only question is really, how do I implement batching day to day? And I think there are probably 2 ways that you can implement batching, which I do. The first is batching by project. So when I was at Oxford in my final year, I had exams and also a master's thesis. They were 2 very different things, and so required 2 very different ways of thinking, 2 different mindsets, and 2 different time frames. So with this, they required 2 completely different workflows. And so I would make 2 desktops on my laptop, one just for the thesis and the other just for exam revision. And I would focus entire days on each. So I had Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday on the thesis, and then Thursday, Friday, and the weekend on exam revision. Batching by project effectively means do everything for the thesis and then everything for the exam. It sounds pretty obvious, but I think actually being really conscious of when you're switching between projects way too frequently is a hugely healthy mindset to adopt. It allows you to be much more efficient in how you're working, both practically, in terms of not having to open and close different things for different projects, but also in terms of how your mind is operating. It doesn't have to switch as much. Now, the second part of batching is batching by tasks. So unless I get an insanely urgent email, for example, I try not to reply to emails more than once every hour or 2. I usually let my emails build up and then do the task of writing and replying to them all at once, which usually takes a quarter of the time. I also batch tasks outside of work. So for example, when I'm cooking a meal for myself or family, I'll make sure I cook 2 or 3 meals worth of that recipe because it doesn't take massively more time to just double the amount. And it saves so much time, both thinking and doing. And I don't have to cook a new meal every single night, and everyone's always happy. They pretty much forget they ate the meal 2 days ago. I also batch chores. So if I'm cleaning, I'll clean the entire house for 3 hours rather than doing 20 minutes here and there. So overall, batching is really all about just having a consciousness of doing the same type of project or task to avoid having to switch between them, losing focus, and overall just spending more time in the phases between the immersed work. So it helps having a layer of preparation before working to sort of batch things in, which will save so much time. All right, the third habit is to try avoid work before doing the work. So this little tip is inspired by Grace Doherty's book, Working Hard, Hardly Working. So there are two ways that I try, and I think anyone can try to avoid doing the work myself in order to free up time for myself. The first way is to delegate. I think in a work context, it's so easy when given a task to just immediately jump on it. So for me, the habit is really just spend 5 minutes thinking. Before I jump into the task, are there other people who can more effectively do this than me? Are there people who could help me with their expertise in this area? Getting into a habit of considering options to outsource is absolutely critical if you want to make the most of your time. Now, the second way I avoid work is to use tech or other resources. And I think in that 5-minute period of thinking, can I do it more effectively? It's also worth considering, can I use technology to help me? Are there other people who have probably done this task before who might be able to say, actually, there's this really useful Excel formula that will solve all of your problems? Or there's this really new cool software which I use that saved me 3 hours. Just spend a couple of minutes thinking around tools, asking other people who have probably done that task before, how they did it and what lessons they learned, and then dive into the task. It will save you so much time. Okay, the final habit is multitask. Now, if you scour for multitasking on YouTube or online, you will find so much advice saying that multitasking is probably the least productive, most awful thing you can possibly do. And generally, I do agree. I think batching and focusing on doing one thing at a time is absolutely essential to productivity. But I do have one exception to the rule that allows me to multitask, and this is to use my brain and body at the same time. So when using my body, doing something physical like walking or exercising or chores around the house, my mind is freed up. So I'm doing passive activities where my mind isn't really working. Giving yourself some level of cognitive challenge will just help you in both the physical side, taking your mind off the exercise or sort of relaxation, but also the exercise will help encourage the brain activity. I usually try to engage my brain while doing these physical things. So that might mean listening to an audiobook or a podcast, or just thinking about studying or work. And similarly, if I'm using my brain to work, I can then use my body to do something physical, like either standing at the desk or walking during a call. This is something I really like. I often do physical things while on a call. I might stretch for 5 minutes or walk around the park with a coffee. Anything you can do really to get some kind of movement in your body while you're working is a really healthy habit to get into. So yeah, if you're using your brain or your body, think of how you can use the other one at the same time. So those are my 4 kind of small, simple, but highly effective habits that honestly, I reckon save me about 20 hours a week. Let me know in the comments below if you have any habits that you think I should adopt that could save me even more time, or ones that have saved you time in the past, or still do. I read every comment and love hearing your thoughts on things. And if you enjoyed this video, consider subscribing, and also check out this video here on how to catch up on work when you've fallen behind. It happens to everyone, and it happened to me quite a lot. There's some pretty good tips in there, if I may say so myself. But yeah, go check it out. Anyway, thanks for watching, and goodbye.